Soldier discovers his brave daughter, just 8, caring for baby brother. Their incredible dog becomes a family guardian. The front door creaked open, and Brian Thompson stood in the threshold of home, a hero returned from the battlefield. Joy swelled in his chest, mixing with anxiety as he took in the sight before him. That was when he saw her, Emma, his little girl, only 8 years old, cradling her baby brother, Tommy. Tears stung at the corners of his eyes. She had transformed, a sweet girl had turned into a miniature mother, her hands gentle on Tommy's tiny body while the dog, Max, remained ever watchful, loyalty etched into his furry face. His heart tightened. She was so young, yet here she was, caregiving like a pro. Emma glanced up, her smile bright but layered with the weight of responsibility. "Daddy!" she cried, rushing into his arms. He swung her into the air, relief washed over him, but at what cost? She should be playing with dolls, not diapering and feeding. A bittersweet joy filled him, yet, as days turned into weeks, reality began to seep into Brian's hope. He learned the struggle that had festered in his absence. Bills piled up, the air of unease thickened in their small home. He could hear hushed whispers around town, judgments echoed in the narrow streets of Pennsylvania. Folks glanced sideways at Emma and Tommy, often shrugging their shoulders in indifference as they walked past. But it wasn't indifference. They knew their situation, and perhaps they blamed his absence. One afternoon, Brian sat on the porch and watched the neighborhood. Children laughed and kicked around a soccer ball. He felt like an outsider in his own world. Emma hustled with Tommy in her arms, her small figure so strong yet so fragile. He wanted to connect, to wrap around his family, but something wasn't right. There was tension, a gap growing wider between them. That week, he heard about a special event for Emma, hosted by a local charity. They recognized her bravery, how she stepped in to fill the gaping hole left by his deployment. Brian felt a mix of pride and dread. As the day approached, the whispers about their family intensified, judgment lingering in the air. They weren't just praising Emma, they were praising her courage while vilifying him for not being there. How could they not see the truth? On the day of the event, the crowd cheered and clapped for Emma, who stood tall with a shy smile in front of the stage. Brian could feel his heart racing, a thunderous drum in his chest. He couldn't let this moment pass. He stepped forward, his hands trembling. "Before we continue, I need to let you know about something important that's happening. YouTube has been making changes to the system and many people are losing notifications from channels they follow. If you're enjoying the content, hit that bell and mark all notifications so you don't miss the next videos. And if you can drop a like, it really helps me with reach. Seriously, it makes a difference. Oh, let me know in the comments where you're watching from. I'm always curious to know who's on the other side of the screen. Now let's continue." With Emma holding his hand, Brian gathered his strength. "You don't know the battles she has fought, the responsibilities she has taken on because of the struggles we've faced." He swallowed hard. The room fell silent, breaths held, all eyes on him as he prepared to unveil the truth. Could his love bring understanding? With Max by their side, he was ready to try. And as the moment hung in the air, he took a deep breath, realizing that sometimes, love speaks louder than the whispers. The crowd waited, tension palpable, as he stepped into the unknown, struggling for acceptance in a world quick to judge. What would happen next? Brian looked into the eyes of the crowd, seeing a mixture of curiosity and skepticism. He cleared his throat, feeling the weight of hesitant hearts. "You might see my daughter as a hero, and she is one," he began, his voice steady yet filled with emotion, "but I'm not the man who abandoned his family. I'm the man who went away to protect them, and nothing pains me more than knowing what she had to endure because of my absence." Emma tightened her grip on his hand. He could feel her trembling, yet the courage in her small frame grounded him. This was their moment, an unveiling of truth that had been cloaked in shadows for too long. "I thought I was fighting for our freedom," he continued, his voice rising with passion, but now I know that true bravery isn't just found in uniforms or medals. It lives right here, he said, glancing at Emma, whose bright eyes shone with a mixture of pride and apprehension. The room shifted slightly as murmurs rippled through the audience. They were listening. Brian took another deep breath. Emma hasn't just survived. She has thrived in adversity. She has become a mother at 8, a role no child should have to bear. And I failed to be there when she needed me most. Brian felt tears prick his eyes. I am grateful for the love and strength she has shown. But I'm also ashamed that the world sees her without seeing the sacrifices she has made, the burdens she has had to carry while I was away. A surge of emotion swept through him, and he put his hand on his daughter's back, feeling the tension in her shoulders ease slightly. I need you all to understand we're more than just a story for your sympathy. We are a family, struggling but determined. And we need your support, not your judgment. Max whined softly and stepped closer, nudging Brian's leg, as if sensing the warmth of the emerging connection. The audience seemed to shift, expressions softening as they processed his words. There was something about vulnerability that drew people in. One woman in the front stood up, tearing up and speaking over the crowd. We've all made sacrifices in our lives. Maybe we didn't see the struggle hidden behind the smiles of this family. Her words resonated, heads nodded, souls stirred. Your honesty is brave, another voice called out, and soon others echoed it. The tension morphed from harsh whispers to warmth. Let us help them. We can't change the past, but we can support them now. Brian's heart soared. The kindness he was met with was a balm. He could almost feel its warmth washing over him and Emma. They weren't alone anymore, they had a community rallying around them. Things shifted within him. The conversation had begun, and maybe it held a path forward. They would face challenges together, but now, at least, they had allies. As the applause from the crowd crescendoed, Brian turned to Emma, kneeling to meet her eyes. You're incredible, you know that? She smiled shyly, a flicker of her childlike joy shining through. Thanks, Daddy. But right then, they heard a soft whimper from Max. His ears perked up, looking toward the edge of the gathering. The crowd began to disperse as murmurs of excitement swirled. Brian's gaze followed Max's, and a sense of unease gripped him. What is it, boy? Brian asked as he stood, unease washing over him like cold water. They all turned, eyes wide, as a shadow emerged from behind the trees lining the park. It was larger than Max, moving stealthily, but they all instinctively knew something was off. Stay close, Emma, Brian whispered, protective instincts kicking in. As the figure became clearer, it loomed large against the fading light, and Brian's heart raced. What were they about to face next? Their reunion had begun, but a new battle was on the horizon. What had they walked into? The figure stepped into the dim light, and it was only a moment before Brian realized what it was. A man, tall and daunting, dressed in tattered clothing that seemed to cling to his gaunt frame. The rest of the crowd tensed, a wave of unease pulsing through them. Who are you? Brian called out, his voice steady but laced with caution. Emma clung a little tighter to his side, her small body trembling against the weight of fear that crept over them. The man paused, taking a moment to look around at the people gathered. His eyes were sunken, shadows lingering beneath them. I'm looking for my sister, he rasped, his voice a barely whispered echo of desperation. Brian's heart raced. He felt the protectiveness grow stronger around Emma. This is not a place for lost souls, he said firmly, an edge in his tone. You shouldn't be here. But the man didn't flinch, he stepped toward them instead, his face twisted with emotion. You don't understand. I'm not here to cause trouble. I just want to find her. She's been missing for weeks. The crowd around them murmured, drifting from one foot to another, uncertainty thick in the air. Emma looked up at Brian, fear lingering in her innocent eyes. Why should we trust you? Brian asked, raising an eyebrow, his protective stance unwavering. He felt the weight of the crowd, their collective curiosity, and uncertainty. "Because I know her name," the man pleaded, desperation spilling from his voice. "I know where she used to live. She was taken when things got rough." He glanced at Emma as if she could somehow provide the answers, the tension twisted in Brian's gut. He remembered how the world seemed to splinter when he was away, stories of people disappearing, families scattered like leaves in the wind. "Emma," Brian said softly, glancing down at her, "do you remember any friend named Lorelei?" Emma's brow furrowed as she thought hard, her expression shifting from scared to concentrated. "Lorelei, I think I saw her once in my class," she muttered, frowning as memories floated just beyond reach. "Your sister?" The man stepped closer, his eyes shimmering with hope, though a shadow of something darker lingered beneath the surface. As the crowd continued to watch, their expressions silent yet alive with anticipation, Brian felt like he was standing at the edge of a deep chasm. Should they get involved? What if that man wasn't telling the truth? "I know this isn't easy," the man said, his voice trembling, "but she's not safe on her own. If you could just help me find her." Brian weighed his options. He felt the gaze of the community, many now leaning in, interested. Some whispered amongst themselves while others nodded, ready to act. "All right," he said finally, driven by a mixture of instinct and compassion. "But we do this together. For Emma's sake, and for yours." The man's face morphed into a mix of surprise and gratitude. "Thank you." Brian took a deep breath, his thoughts racing. Hopes were rising again, but so were fears. Could they face whatever lay ahead together? "Emma," Brian said, kneeling down once more, "we have a new goal now. Someone needs us. Are you ready?" She nodded, her small hand clutching the edge of her shirt, a flicker of bravery sparkling in her eyes. She had come so far already, this could be another step toward healing. But as they turned to face the park once more, the sun dipped below the horizon, shadows deepening. The world around them felt heavier, they were venturing into unknown territory, and an unsettling thrill coursed through him. What awaited them in this tangled web of lost connections? The new challenges loomed, ready to test their renewed strength. Would they find what they were searching for, or would the night hold more secrets than they bargained for? The chill of the evening air wrapped around Brian like a heavy blanket as he stood with Emma and the desperate man. Shadows danced across the ground, and the atmosphere felt charged with unspoken fear and hope. Brian could feel his heart pounding in his chest. It was a rhythmic reminder that they were stepping into a dangerous world, yet they had to try. "Where do we start?" Brian asked, directing his question at the man. He could feel the weight of Emma's small hand in his, squeezing gently, as though she was drawing strength from him. The man blinked, surprisingly taken aback by the urgency in Brian's tone. "There's an old house by the river. It used to belong to Lorelei's family before they disappeared. That's where we need to go." Brian exchanged a glance with Emma, her eyes were wide and searching. "Do we have to go there?" she asked, her voice barely above a whisper. His heart swelled with affection for her bravery. "We can do this together." Brian's voice was firm, trying to mask the uncertainty that twisted his insides. "We'll be careful." The man nodded, his resolve hardening. "I promise I'll protect both of you." As they set off, the streetlights flickered to life, illuminating the path ahead. The three of them moved cautiously, the echoes of their footsteps merging with the night sounds, crickets chirping and the rustle of leaves. All the while, Brian felt the weight of unseen eyes on them, watching, waiting, lurking just beyond the edges of light. Each step deeper into the darkness felt heavier. Images of other families he knew who had faced loss played in his mind like a broken record. He thought of the community that had held him up when his own world was splintered. He couldn't allow that to happen again. Soon, they reached the edge of the riverbank and found the old house. Its silhouette was stark against the moonlit sky. The house looked abandoned, a relic lost to time. Paint peeled from the walls, and the windows stared back like empty eyes. "Are we sure this is the right place?" Emma's voice quivered as she took a cautious step back. Not sure of anything anymore, Brian admitted, glancing at the man. What if no one's here? What if this is a dead end? The man took a deep breath, gazing at the house. I can't explain why, but I can feel it. Lorelei has to be here. I can't give up. Brian felt the intensity of his words. In that moment, he understood something important. They were no longer just on a quest, they were weaving together their hopes and fears in the very fabric of their search. If they were to succeed, they needed to embrace those emotions together. Okay, Brian said, taking charge. Let us go inside. But stick close. We don't know what we might find. He pulled Emma in closer, sensing her unease surfacing again. As they walked up the creaky stairs, it felt like the old wood whispered secrets of the past. The air was dense with the scent of mold and memories long forgotten. Brian's heart raced with each step. What lay beyond the door? Would they find Lorelei? The shadows inside the house flickered as they turned the corner, revealing a dimly lit hall. Then it happened. A faint sound, soft cries echoing down the hallway. Brian felt a jolt of adrenaline course through him. The man's expression shifted, a mixture of hope and fear washing over his face. They exchanged a glance, the weight of the moment heavy between them. Is that? Brian started, uncertainty heavy in his voice. I think it's her. She's here. The man shouted, lunging forward, urgency igniting his movements, but Brian remained rooted, his intuition screaming that they needed to be careful. Wait! He called, heart pounding. We don't know what's waiting for us. But it was too late, the man had burst through the doorway, and just as quickly, a scream pierced the silence of the house. What now? Brian's thoughts spiraled. Fear clawed at his insides. Had they walked into a trap? He took a deep breath, steeling himself for whatever lay ahead, knowing that the safety of Emma and now, potentially, Lorelei rested on their next move. With everything on the line, they had to plunge into the unknown. Would they uncover the truth, or had they awakened something they couldn't handle? Brian's heart raced as he exchanged worried looks with Emma. The man's scream echoed in the dim hallway, reverberating off the peeling walls. A moment stretched into eternity. Should we go in? Emma asked, her voice trembling. Yeah, we have to, Brian answered, though every nerve in him screamed to retreat. He squeezed her hand tighter, a silent promise of protection. When the man charged through the doorway, it felt as if he were racing toward both salvation and danger. Moving cautiously, they approached the door. Brian pushed it open wider, revealing a small, dimly lit room cluttered with old furniture and dust-laden curtains. The cries grew louder, filling the space with desperation. Inside, the man knelt on the floor, a figure curled up beside him. Brian's breath caught in his throat. It was Lorelei. She looked thin, her face smeared with dirt, but alive. Lorelei! The man exclaimed, voice cracking as he reached for her. Thank God you're okay. But what he saw next froze the warmth in Brian's heart. Crouched protectively beside Lorelei was a small baby, no more than a few months old. Hair matted, chubby cheeks streaked with the remnants of tears, the baby fussed, stirring as if sensing the commotion. Who's that? Emma whispered, stepping closer as fear blended with curiosity. I don't know, Brian said quietly, uncertainty gnawing at him. But we need to find out. He took a careful step inside, scanning for any signs of danger. The room felt trapped in time, shadows lingering as if they belonged there. Lorelei looked up, her eyes wide and glassy, reflecting both fear and hope. I thought I was all alone, she choked out, voice barely audible. I didn't want him to cry. I was scared. The man reached out, wiping the tears from her cheeks, his voice steady. You're not alone anymore. We're here to take you home. Brian took a moment to let her words sink in. Lorelei had taken on so much, looking after her baby brother in a situation so dire. "You did a brave thing," he said softly, finding his own strength to reassure. "You're a hero." But even as Brian spoke, a flicker of doubt formed inside him. They weren't out of danger yet. The house groaned and shuddered, as if it were alive and angry that they had disturbed its slumber. "We need to get out of here," he urged, glancing back towards the doorway. "Can you walk, Lorelei?" I can try," she said, her voice strong despite the tremors of fear. The man gently lifted her and the baby, switching quickly to the protectiveness that had drawn them to her. "Let us go, all of us together. We've got you." Brian nodded, feeling Emma squeeze his hand. "Stay close," he whispered to her as they began to move, joining the man's steady pace. Emerging into the hallway, Brian scanned for signs of anything lurking in the shadows. He noticed the floor creak beneath them, but this time it felt different, like the house was protesting their escape. A chill ran through him as he sensed that something might be pursuing them, a gnawing instinct suggesting they weren't safe yet. "Hurry," he urged, pushing ahead. The sounds of their footsteps felt alive, chasing them down the corridor, echoing off forgotten pasts. Inching closer to the front door, Brian's heart pounded louder. Every breath he took was paired with a burgeoning sense of urgency. Ahead lay the escape they sought, but a question burned in his mind: what else had they stirred in the depths of that old house? Then it happened, a loud crash behind them, the sound of something heavy falling. As he turned, shadows shifted and a low growl emerged from the darkness. "Run!" Brian shouted, panic spurring them into motion. They dashed for the exit, racing toward the light of freedom hanging just beyond the threshold, but the haunting cries of the past chased them, and Brian couldn't shake the feeling that they were not alone in their flight. With the looming threat of the unknown just behind them, would they make it to safety, or would they plunge back into the perils they had unearthed? As they sprinted down the hallway, Brian's instincts screamed that they needed to reach the door before whatever was lurking behind them could catch up. Each step echoed in his mind like a countdown, amplifying the urgency with every heartbeat. Lorelei's brother squirmed in her arms, the sound of his soft whimpers mingling with the dread hanging in the air. Brian glanced back, the darkness shivering behind them. Shadows twisted and elongated, and he swore he saw a pair of glowing eyes pierce through the gloom, searching for them. "Keep going," Brian urged, pushing Emma and Lorelei forward with fierce determination. Their pace quickened, if only out of sheer necessity. The front door loomed nearer, but it felt like it was teasing them, their escape just out of reach. Another crash echoed behind them, sharp and jarring, and the house trembled as if it were coming alive, ready to swallow them whole. "Just a bit further," the man carrying Lorelei announced, his voice laced with raw determination. Brian could see the fire in his eyes, an unwavering resolve to protect what was left of his family. With a final surge of strength, they reached the door. It was swollen, the wood warped from years of neglect, but Brian threw his shoulder into it, forcing it open. Light poured in, a stark contrast to the dimness they had been trapped in. It warmed Brian's face, igniting a tiny spark of hope amid the chaos. Just then, a low growl rumbled from behind them, echoing off the walls like thunder. There was no time for fear. They surged forward into the daylight, the cool breeze wrapping around them as they tumbled onto the steps outside. Brian's heart raced as he pushed himself to his feet, quickly turning to help Lorelei. The man set her down carefully, cradling the baby as they all took a moment to regroup. What was that?" Emma gasped, her eyes wide as she searched for any signs of danger in the shadows of the doorway. "I don't know," Brian admitted, the words sticking in his throat. "But I have a feeling it was just a taste of what's left hidden in there." Lorelei pressed against the man, fear still etched into her face. "We can't go back inside, not ever," she said, her voice shaky yet determined. "Agreed," said the man, his grip protective around Lorelei. "We're going to the police. They need to know about this place." But even as he spoke, Brian's mind raced. What if they told the police and no one believed them? What if the secrets that had been buried in there were too dangerous, too dark to face? Then a chill swept through the air as the heavy front door creaked suddenly behind them, swinging wider, revealing a sliver of enchantment and terror inside. "Look!" Emma exclaimed, pointing. Something moved inside the dimness. "What if it's still following us?" Lorelei whimpered, clutching her brother tighter. "Stay close, everyone. We need to stay together," Brian said, scanning the area, aware that danger lurked just out of sight. Fear coiled tightly in his stomach, but the day wasn't lost yet. Hope flickered along with a flicker of courage rising within him. If they could face the horrors within that house, maybe they could face whatever lay ahead, the unknown they had yet to understand, while protecting this brave girl and her baby brother. A soft whimper cut through the tense air, and Brian's heart almost stopped. The noise came from beyond the edge of the property out in the yard. Brian frowned, his breath steadying in his chest. What was that? Lorelei looked at him, eyes wide. I think it's trying to help us." As they stepped toward the edge, apprehension swept through Brian's heart. Would the coming revelation shine light on their path, or pull them deeper into the darkness that had haunted them? The moment weighed heavy with questions, and they were about to discover just how far the darkness has seeped into their lives and whether they could brave it together. The whimpering grew louder, beckoning them closer. Brian reached out a hand to steady himself against an old oak tree at the edge of the yard. Shadows danced around him as the sunlight struggled to break through the heavy canopy of leaves overhead. He squinted into the gloom, heart hammering in his chest. What lay just beyond was unknown, yet the sound felt so familiar. "Maybe it's a dog?" Emma suggested, her voice a mix of hope and uncertainty. Brian nodded, glancing back at Lorelei and the man, a protective shadow over her brother. He could see the tightness in Lorelei's jaw, her eyes darting between the house and the sound. The bond between them was palpable, a fragile thread woven through fear and love. What if it really was an animal? A dog, perhaps? Could it be the lifeline they needed in this nightmare? In the past, Brian had seen how animals could sense fear, how they could connect to human emotions with an uncanny instinct. He felt the tug of hope a flicker against the storm brewing in his mind. "Let us go check it out," Brian said, determination fueling his words despite the unease knotting his stomach. He began to move forward, cautiously stepping over tangled roots and uneven ground. The whimpering intensified, a gentle plea that twisted in his heart as they crept closer. With each step, Emma's hand tightened on Lorelei's arm, and they all fell into an instinctive huddle. Then, from behind a bush so thick it seemed to hide entire worlds, a small figure emerged. A scruffy dog, its fur caked in dirt, stumbled into the daylight. Its eyes were wide and frightened, and the sight brought forth tears of relief mixed with sorrow. Brian crouched down, arms wide open. "Hey there, buddy," he whispered, his voice a soft balm against the chaos. The dog paused, cautiously tilting its head back, then limped forward, a sudden burst of energy pushing it through the warmth of the light. The instant the dog was close enough, Brian recognized the markings, the old scars. A familiar warmth surged inside him. "Beck?" The dog's tail began to wag, a feeble movement at first, but as Brian reached out to scratch behind its ears, the excitement built. Beck nudged against Brian, his larger-than-life grin returning. The connection was pure and unmistakable. Lorelei gasped, tears filling her eyes. "Is that really?" "Yes. Beck's our family dog," Brian said, overwhelmed with joy as the dog danced between them, licking at their hands and wagging its tail. Hope swelled in the air around them, igniting a warmth that melted some of the tension. But they all felt it, the undertow of darkness from the house still simmering. That thrill of hope felt delicate, as if the shadows were waiting, lingering just behind the light's reach. "What should we do now?" the man asked, concern etched in his features, staring at the house that felt like a living entity, still pulsing with something unknown. "Let us get out of here," Brian said, his voice steady yet urgent. We'll go to the police first, then regroup. We can't leave until we're sure no one else is in danger. Beck whined softly, as if understanding the gravity of the situation, as he nuzzled against the fronts of their legs. I don't want to go back inside, Lorelei trembled, her baby brother shifting in her arms. Brian felt that fear too, creeping in. But his spine straightened with determination. Then we'll make sure we never have to. Together. As they stepped back, shadows in the doorway shifted again, a deep-seated growl rattling the air around them. The moment stirred their urgency. But Brian paused, turning towards the yard in one last glance, sensing something else lingering at the edge of their world. What dark secrets were waiting to be uncovered? And who, or what, was still trapped within the embrace of that haunting house? They had barely escaped. Had the battle truly ended, or was it just beginning? Beck's presence ignited a flicker of hope, yet the air felt thick with something else, an unwelcome reminder of what still lay behind them. The door loomed like a gaping maw, shadowed and ominous. Brian felt everyone's gaze shift from the dog to the house, a shared, silent understanding that this wasn't over. Let us go, he urged, the gravel crunching under their hurried steps. They moved as a tight unit, the moment too fragile, too precious. With Beck leading the way, a newfound energy surged through them, but Brian couldn't shake the cold grip of dread in his gut. Once outside the yard, they reached the concrete path that led toward the road. Each step toward safety felt like a small victory, but the growl they heard earlier kept replaying in Brian's head, a dark echo that pulled at his thoughts. What if something is still in there? Lorelei asked, her voice barely above a whisper. Brian could see the tremor in her hands, still holding her baby brother like he was as fragile as glass. Then we'll deal with it, Brian replied, his tone firm but surprising even himself with the conviction he felt. We're not leaving anyone behind. They reached the end of the driveway and stopped, peering back at the house. The windows glared back at them, vacant and accusing. Even the wind seemed to shiver around its structure, as if the very world understood the tension in the air. Maybe we should just call for help from here, Emma suggested, glancing from the house to the road ahead. What if it comes after us? Beck will protect us, right? Brian said, ruffling the dog's fur, needing to feel that warmth. Beck stood tall, a guardian in the chaos, radiating loyalty as he looked at each of them in turn, his gentle eyes filled with an understanding that only a dog can possess. Lorelei tightened her hold on her brother, the lines of fear etched deep on her face. But what if we can't go in? What if it's really bad? Hey! Brian crouched to meet her eye level. No matter what, we face it together. You've been brave already. We can't stop now. With a shaky breath, she nodded, though doubt still lingered in her gaze. Come on, guys. We'll call the police from the main road. They'll know what to do, Brian reassured, starting to walk again. He scanned the surroundings, every rustle of leaves causing his heart to race. As they turned to leave the remnants of that haunted place behind, the growl erupted again, louder this time, a deep, rumbling sound that made the ground beneath them vibrate. Beck's ears perked up, and he stood at attention, ready to defend his pack. Run! Brian shouted, grabbing Lorelei's arm as he dashed forward. Panic surged as they sprinted, the adrenaline coursing through their veins. Fear compelled them to keep moving. Yet, in the corner of his mind, an unsettling thought began to take shape. What if they weren't the only ones, or what if something had followed them? As they reached the edge of the road, panting and wild-eyed, Brian glanced back one last time. The house now stood quiet, but the air felt charged with something, an absence, a watching presence. And deep down, he knew, they weren't finished yet. Just then, Lorelei screamed, pointing behind them. Look! Brian turned slowly, dread pooling in his stomach as he braced for whatever was coming next. He squinted into that darkness behind them, expecting the worst. What had they unwittingly awakened? And would they be able to uncover the truth before it was too late? Brian's heart raced as he spun around, the world narrowing to a single point. Whatever was chasing them was finally revealing itself. Beck barked, standing protectively in front of them, muscles taut, ready to spring into action. "Stay close," Brian commanded, his voice rising above the pounding of his heart. The others instinctively huddled together, their breaths shallow, raw nerves buzzing with anticipation. In the thickening shadows, a shape coalesced. With every second, it became clearer, a hulking figure emerging from the darkened depths of the yard. Brian squinted, panic coursing through him. It was massive, its outline dark against the moonlit sky, and a low, guttural growl rumbled once more, sending chills down his spine. Was it a dog? Or something else entirely? "Move," Emma urged, her voice high-pitched but steady. They turned on their heels just as the creature lunged forward. They ran, limbs pumping, feet pounding on the asphalt, adrenaline fueling their escape. The creature's growl morphed into a frenzied snarl, each sound echoing behind them, sharp and menacing. Brian knew they needed distance. He could feel the desperation tightening in his chest, but he refused to look back. In the chaos, he kept glancing at Lorelei, her brother clutched close to her. "Hold on tight," he shouted. "We're almost there." The road was just ahead, a promise of safety that felt tantalizingly close yet far away. Beck dashed alongside them, barking furiously at the shadows, a fierce and loyal protector. Every instinct in Brian told him to trust the dog, to believe in its strength. Somehow, that faith steadied him against the rising panic. As they reached the road, they glanced behind them. The beast had stopped short at the edge of the yard, staring at them with its dark, unblinking eyes, like a dark cloud of menace hovering close but still chained to its territory. "Just keep going," Brian yelled, yanking Lorelei's arm as they crossed onto the open stretch of road. Their breaths came in gasps, each inhale sliced with the sharpness of fear. But as they paused, the adrenaline began to ebb, and the reality of their situation sunk in. They had escaped for now. Yet, the question lingered in their minds, what were they fleeing from? As they caught their breath, Beck nudged Brian's side, his silver fur glistening eerily in the moonlight. Brian knelt and stroked the dog's head, seeking comfort in its presence. "Good boy, Beck. What do you think that was?" Beck responded only with a gentle nuzzle, his eyes wide and alert. "We should call someone," Emma said, shaking her head. "The police, or maybe we need to go back for Mom." Lorelei's voice trembled, laced with determination. "I can't let anything happen to her." Brian felt his heart drop. She was right. Their mother was still inside that house, a house that felt like a maze of dread and danger. Shivers jolted through him, but he couldn't let the fear overwhelm him. "No," Brian said, steeling himself. "We stick together. Once we call for help, we'll go back in. We can't leave her." The determination in Brian's voice felt like a lifeline. But how could they face what lay ahead? The shadows felt darker now, and the night seemed to whisper secrets of things best left hidden. As they made their way to the main road, Brian grasped Lorelei's shoulder, looking deep into her eyes. "Whatever it is, it won't take us down. We'll find her together. We can beat this." But still, like the dark figure lingering behind them, an unease settled in Brian's heart. The real fight was just beginning, and he couldn't shake the thought that this was only the beginning of something much bigger and far more dangerous. "What if it comes back?" Lorelei whispered, as they prepared to call for help. Brian's mind raced with that thought, the weight of the uncertainty compelling him to act. They hadn't awakened something just outside the walls of that house. There were forces at play they could never have anticipated, and as the night stretched before them dark, vast, and filled with unseen threats, the question hung heavily in the air: what other horrors awaited them beyond that threshold, and how much stronger would they have to become to confront them? Brian stood at the edge of the road, heart pounding and the echoes of their narrow escape still ringing in his ears. He had to keep it together, not just for himself, but for everyone with him. The shadows of the old house loomed in his mind as a reminder of the dangers still lurking, both out in the open and within their own hearts. "Let us call for help," Brian said, trying to steady himself. Lorelei nodded, her expression steeled with determination. Right. We can't leave Mom. Emma tightly held onto Brian's shirt, her small fingers gripping as if anchoring herself against the fear creeping back in. Will they believe us, Daddy? She asked, eyes wide with anxiety. They have to, Brian replied, trying to mask his uncertainty. He pulled out his phone, hands shaking slightly. The police need to know what is going on. While he dialed, he felt the warmth of Beck lean against his leg, the dog's gentle presence grounding him. The line rang, tension soaring higher with each ring, until a voice finally answered. 911, what's your emergency? Brian took a deep breath. We just escaped from an old house. There's someone in there who needs help, and we're not sure how many are inside. His voice cracked as reality set in, urgency pushing him forward. You need to come with us. Moments later, they could hear the distant wailing of sirens. Relief rushed through Brian, but it was short-lived. The shadows behind the house remained, dancing at the edge of his mind like specters reminding him that even now, they weren't out of danger. As they waited, Lorelei turned to Brian, her brother still nestled protectively in her arms. If we go back for Mom, we can't just run in blindly, right? We need a plan. He nodded, impressed by her courage. You're right. We'll stick together, find the safest way in, and if need be, we'll have backup with the police. Emma's eyes flickered with hope. And Beck will protect us too. She glanced around as if the dog could somehow ward off the haunting memories of what lay behind them. A few moments later, the police arrived, flashing lights illuminating the road like a beacon of hope. Suddenly, it felt like help was real more than just a promise. Officers poured out of the vehicles, their faces firm, ready for whatever lay ahead. Where's the house? An officer asked sharply, capturing Brian's attention with the urgency in his tone. He pointed down the road, just back that way. We need to be quick. Another officer stepped forward, eyes locking onto Brian and his newfound family. We'll handle it from here. You all did the right thing. But as they turned to head back, Brian felt a sharp knot form in his stomach. Wait. The creature, it's dangerous. You need to know. Don't worry, the officer interjected, reassuring yet stern. We've dealt with worse. You did the right thing coming here. Just stay back. And together they walked. Brian with Emma by his side, Lorelei clenching her brother tightly, and Beck leading the way, instincts sharpened. As the officers approached the house, the air felt electric, charged with both dread and anticipation. Stay close, Brian whispered, scanning the darkened shape of the old house as they reached the entrance. Shadows shifted, but this time there were no growls, only the sounds of prepared officers coordinating movements, flashlights slicing through the dark. Brian held on to hope like a fragile lantern in the darkness, but within him, a realization grew. The past had been haunting them, yet this moment carried the possibility of healing. They had faced fears, made sacrifices, and found strength in one another. Then, just as they were about to cross the threshold, the growl echoed out once more, sharper this time, dripping with malevolence. The officers froze momentarily, voices turning serious. Everyone, hold back. They shouted, quickly strategizing behind the protective barrier of their vehicles. Lorelei. Brian turned, his heart racing. Can you hear anything? Any details that could help? Her brows knitted in concentration. She shared, I can still hear her crying. It's close. Brian felt a sense of urgency swell. We can't waste time. Whatever it is, we can handle it together. Officers, we need to get in there. With resolve, an officer signaled toward them. We'll go in as a team. You stay back, stay safe. This is too dangerous. Just as he gripped Lorelei's arm and held tightly onto Emma's hand, realization washed over him. They had walked through fire to reach this point, and now was neither the time nor place to step back. No. We will not leave anyone behind. He squeezed Emma's hand tightly, their eyes locking in mutual understanding. They were family. They would face whatever terror awaited them together. With each breath, determination built in every soul around them. The officers positioned themselves, breaths synchronized with Brian's ready to face the darkness together. And so, with one final look back at the family huddled together for strength, Brian took a step forward into the unknown, feeling the weight and warmth of courage and love. Here began their true testament. Through shadows lay the light of hope, and together they would shine through. The past had shaped them, but the future was theirs to rewrite. As the police entered the house and the chaos untangled, Brian knelt beside Emma and Lorelei, whispering words of encouragement. They may not know what lay ahead, but they had one another, and that was the foundation they needed to face the darkness, rewrite their story, and embrace the new dawn that awaited. You need to subscribe now. This is the moment to show your support. Hit that bell and mark all notifications so you don't miss the next exclusive stories. Leave a like now to feed the algorithm and help us climb higher. Comment below with your reactions and feelings about the ending. Don't wait not even one more second to share this video with at least 5 friends who need to see this transformation. True fans understand the importance of supporting the channel through these actions.